Welcome to Tech News of the Week with your host, a casual reference to a long-forgotten movie scene.
Welcome to Tech News of the Week. Yes, I'm ditching the weird naming thing that we tried to do for a while. And when I say we, I mean me. This is our weekly tech news roundup where Chris and I go over 4 things that we found interesting. If you'd like to comment on the things we found or suggest things, hey, we have a new website. It's pod.chaoslever.com. Leave us a comment, leave us a voicemail. We might listen to it, or more likely not. Now, Chris, you did the main article this week, so I will start with careful with your S3 naming. Maciej, last name is Polish, so I'm not going to try.
The first name's Polish, too.
Yeah, but I actually looked up how to pronounce that, and it's Maciej. So I did something today. He is a software engineer, and he set up an S3 bucket for one of his clients as a proof of concept. There was information being written to it as part of a larger project. Now, he assured them that the cost of the S3 bucket would be negligible, maybe $20. Then he checked his billing page 2 days later and found up he had racked up $1,300 in charges related to S3. What in the world was happening? It turns out that Maciej had picked an S3 bucket name that also happened to be the default setting for a popular open source backup program, meaning that anyone who installed that program and didn't change the S3 setting would be sending write requests to his S3 bucket. Now, the bucket was private and locked down, so all the requests failed. But a funny thing about S3 is that they still charge you for failed requests. Half a cent per 1,000 requests. And he had received nearly 100 million requests in the 2-day period. And it's actually worse than that, because when an S3 request is sent to the wrong region, it's automatically redirected to the correct region. That sounds good, but the redirect has a cost associated with it too. Bad. The story has a happy ending, in that AWS canceled the charges and Jeff Barr, the chief evangelist over at AWS, responded to Maciej's Medium post and said AWS is going to look into fixing this in a more systemic way. The lesson for you, dear listener, is don't pick a common name for your bucket. Add a random suffix to buckets as a safeguard and watch your AWS bill like a hawk. There's a bit more to the story, so definitely check out the post on Medium for details and follow-up.
Another day, another disastrous Windows patch bundle that breaks everything. Patch bundles have been the norm for Windows, and maybe even Microsoft in general, for a really long time. 2015 at the barest minimum, when they were announced as the standard operating procedure for Windows 10. But cumulative updates have been around for a long time. These days, they call them LCUs, which stands for Last Cumulative Update, which I'm sure they think sounds super technical. What else has been around for a while is these LCUs breaking people's computers, Microsoft doing nothing to fix the bundle, thus forcing people to remove the entire bundle and remain less secure. To wit, April 2024's update bundle, which was released on April 9th, breaks VPN. Just VPN doesn't work now.
Great.
Microsoft acknowledged this situation on the 30th of April, giving no explanation whatsoever as to why it happened, noted that it will affect almost every single Windows platform that is still supported by Microsoft, and provided no steps to mitigate whatsoever. Unless, of course, you pay for support, then you can open a ticket. Amazing. Not like VPN's a big deal to like the majority of corporate America or anything. A follow-up article that is not linked in the Windows Health dashboard page does provide instructions, but all you can do is remove the entire LCU. And remember, the entire LCU gets removed means all the other fixes that are fine aren't on your computer anymore. Not a great look for Microsoft, who recently recommitted to security in a public way. Because now, you, as a Microsoft customer, have to remove an entire month's worth of security patches in order for people to be able to connect to their offices securely. Nailed it.
They're still salty about remote access, basically. No more terrible default passwords in the UK. The United Kingdom recently passed a new version of the Product Security and Telecommunications Act that would force device manufacturers selling consumer products in the UK to take simple, common steps to improve device security. For starters, devices can no longer have a simple default password, such as, password, admin, or sometimes no password at all. Instead, the Act requires that if a default password is set, it has to be randomized and unique to the device, and there has to be a simple and clear way for the consumer to change it. Crazy, I know. The madness doesn't stop there. Device manufacturers also need to make their software updatable, have it check for updates on a regular basis, and either install those updates automatically or prompt the end user to do so. Violations of this updated act carry a potentially hefty fine of £10 million or 4% of worldwide revenue. Since most of these companies exist outside the UK and also sell to a global audience, the updated act should have a halo effect for all the rest of us, which is good because similar legislation in the EU is not set to take effect for at least 3 years, and the US has basically nothing, despite a 2020 bill that pushed NIST to develop standards as part of the Cyber Trust Mark. Hopefully, this means that the Internet of Things will take one tiny, eensy-weensy step towards an Internet of slightly more secure things, or as I like to say, IOSMist. It has a nice ring to it, don't you think?
Iosmist. Another day, another pseudo clone that everyone thinks will take over the world. Wait, I just used this joke, right? Did it? No. I would never be so gauche as to repeat myself. Anyway, stop me if you've heard of any of these software packages before. Do as, userve, super, SSU, PK exec, and or dzdo.
No, but I like the last one.
It's delightful. Do they sound familiar? No, they don't? Well, they're basically all the same thing. In concept, they're a replacement for sudo. Sudo, or sudo, S-U-D-O for those who aren't pronouncing things the way that I am, or potentially correctly, is one of the most famous Linux commands ever, both because of its necessary utility and because of its connection to an XKCD comic that you've definitely seen a few million times. Sudo, in short, allows someone to run commands as another user. Usually that user is root, which is the most powerful user in Unix, Linux environments. Sudo has been around forever. And as such, people periodically try to improve upon it. One of the latest of these is called Run Zero, and it comes from the systemd project, and thus, of course, immediately raises suspicions.
Indeed.
There are, to be fair, some advantages to the modernizing of elevated commands and finer-grained permissions, which is something that Linux has never... It hasn't been a strength, let's say.
Fair.
It has been simplistic, and you either get access in an all or nothing model, or you get a flat no, and you get scolded on the command line. That's generally more or less it when it came to how it was done. Incidentally, this is a major reason that containers are so cool. You build a container, you make it work, then you configure it in such a fashion that nobody ever has to log into it. And furthermore, you can make it so that nobody can log into it. How's that for security? Anyway, time will tell if Run Zero makes it into the world of commands that people just take in granted. Take in granted?
Ingratiated? We'll workshop it.
Take to Ulysses Grant's tomb in Linux. I could go on, but I've already talked about commands that we take for granted in Linux on the show, and I would never be so gauche as to repeat myself.
And thank goodness for that. All right, that's it. We're done. Go away now. Bye.